Today I welcome Dr. Emma Mardlin to Food for Thought, a trained psychotherapist who holds a Ph.D. in mind-body medicine. She works with both adults and children in the Pinnacle Practice, which is a health and wellbeing practice and training company that she runs. Today we're talking about her latest book, Mind-Body Diabetes Type 1 and Type 2, a positive, powerful and proven solution to stop diabetes. Now that title piqued my interest, I have to say, and because it's a health issue that she's actually had for 2 decades. So she's had personal experience of living with it. Hi Emma, how are you today?
Hello, I'm great, thank you, Deborah. Busy as ever, but I'm guessing you're pretty much the same. And I'd just like to say before we start, it's fantastic everything that you do yourself in the field of natural health.
That's very kind of you. Appreciate that. Give my audience a little bit of background about yourself and why you've written this book about diabetes. I know it's very linked to your own health story, which is very, very inspiring to read. And I think my audience will find just that side of it, this interview, quite inspiring to hear.
Oh, well, thank you. As you mentioned before, I've had type 1 diabetes for 22 years now, just over, and obviously there's been lots of curveballs thrown my way throughout that period of time. And now through the work I do professionally, which is working in the field of mind-body medicine, in order to activate positive results within the body, I've had some phenomenal results researching that as well to really be in the process of actually reversing type 1 diabetes, dare I say that, myself at the moment. So really what I wanted to do with the book is communicate that to everybody and show them a different way of thinking regarding diabetes and mind-body medicine generally, in terms of a general health context, what we can all achieve if we tap into our minds more and we utilize what we're able to do with the mind, especially the unconscious mind, the mind that most of us don't actually use a lot of the time, to achieve amazing results in terms of health and healing. But in diabetes, this is it's little understood or appreciated. So this is a book about a different way of thinking for different results, because we can stop this condition. It never needs to be a problem at all. And I really have this message that I need to communicate to the world, and even more importantly, how we specifically do this.
I'm absolutely astonished that you're saying you can stop this condition. Because it's just
I think most people will be.
Yeah, because it's just not thought to be the case.
Well, actually, it's astonishing, as you say, that some people still think that it's not possible to reverse type 2 diabetes. And actually, that's something I've known myself for an incredibly long time. And in fact, once I did go on a diabetes online forum, and I was positively aiming to encourage people, and I just basically started talking about how through diet and lifestyle changes alone and a different way of thinking, you can actually stop and reverse type 2 diabetes. And I was actually banned from this particular forum for just a positive comments of what I was saying. Then, lo and behold, a few years later, what comes out, tons of books and research that actually, yes, you can reverse type 2 diabetes, and X number of people have done that. So, that's one reason that we can definitely do that. But my point here is that everything starts with a belief system. And when we start tapping into the unconscious mind, and people can really learn and understand the sheer power of the mind-body connection, what's possible, then there's absolutely no reason at all why type 1 diabetes can't be exactly the same. Now, stopping diabetes is something I refer to as something, it's a personal choice for every individual with this condition in terms of how far they choose to take this. So it can be from halting the condition, so that's avoiding any of the complications, making sure they don't feel that they have to live with any forms of depression attached to the diabetes. So they can live a life free of feeling any baggage around the condition. Does it have to limit them in any way? Right through to actually going through the process of reversing this condition in its entirety. And for me personally, because I'm in this field and I know exactly what's possible, I have no inhibitions, I place no limitations on myself, that I am going through the process to completely reverse this condition. Mad as that might sound right now, but then going back to my first point, you know, I was mad when I put out in public that you can reverse type 2 diabetes, so you can probably see where I'm going with this. And it does all start from a deep-seated belief system coupled with logical knowledge as well, and that's really what I provide in the book. So there's a whole system of support, resources, the knowledge. So it covers the why and it covers the how, as much as it gives people support, and it talks about what to do when things don't always go according to plan, because that's often the case with diabetes. It does like to throw up surprises and curveballs, so it's having the right mindset in how to deal with that as well.
Now, you've put in place an indestructible mindset for yourself, yet you are, all through the book, you give clear examples of what you've called the curveballs that have been sent your way. But my jaw dropped. Now, I don't have a chronic disease state as it would be seen as, but my jaw really did drop reading your book, because you had experience where one of your teachers told your classmates that you were the devil. You'd become a devil, possessed by the devil, which, you know, I'm laughing about, and I apologise if I offend people, or offending yourself. Actually, it was astonishing you were dropped down in grades. That was just in school, because you had a condition that they felt would affect your mind. And yet at the end of this, you've come out with what is an absolutely solid mindset that you can heal yourself. But your experiences have really you've come up against it, haven't you?
I have had plenty of challenges, and the first one you mentioned about the possessed devil incident, that always cracks me up, because it's quite unbelievable. But I do. I say in the book, I can no doubt be devilish at times, which is true, and can't we all? But it's never for having a hypo. Trust me on that one. But that was actually my first experience of having a hypo, unfortunately. So I was 10 years old, still in primary school, fresh to diabetes, and was the end of the day, and sometimes the school secretary, she collected the empty milk bottles, so she was taking them back to the office, and I think she just asked me if I could give her a hand carrying these empty glass bottles back to the office. So with slurred speech and a little bit dazed, I'd say no, because I am too tired. Anyway, so she complained to the teacher and said I was being really rude, and rudeness was never in my nature as a child. To be honest, I was a really good kind of conscientious type of child. And in primary school, you know, they all know who everybody is, so you'd expect they'd have recognised that and recognised something was slightly out of character. So despite having explained to the teacher all the ins and outs of diabetes, what to look for, what could potentially happen, I was told off and given lines, so I had to write, I must not be rude, I don't know how many times. But that didn't even go according to plan, because I wrote my name, Emma Mardlin, on the top, and I got as far as writing Emma, completely joined up all the way. So there was clearly something very wrong, but for some reason, nothing was detected. It was only till I wasn't waiting at the school gates that my mum actually realised something must have been wrong, flew up into the classroom, discovered I was having a hypo, dragged me out, gave me everything I needed, prevented me from lapsing unconscious, and we went home for the day. But the second day we went into school, and we always had this quiet time prayer circle in the morning, and the teacher, she started explaining that I'd had this hypo, so I was thinking, that's good, she's just explaining to everybody what happened. And at this point I'd already given the class, and the whole school actually, informative talks about diabetes and what to look for, how to help me should there be any problem at all. So she's talking away, and then she said, to my surprise, And yesterday we had an incident where Emma was taken over by evil spirits and possessed by the devil. Yeah. So you can imagine all the other kids kind of looked horrified by it as if I'm some possessed demon now. So not knowing whether to laugh or cry about it, as you would expect a 10-year-old to react. I stood up and just explained to the class pretty sharpish how my sugars had just dropped below normal, and everything happened that I'd explained to them before. And that, that was that really. I'm not quite sure if I walked out at the time, and, I think I was, as a child, I was still pretty mad. I was very aware as a child, so I still found it amusing, but shocked at the same time. So, yeah, that was one incident of the first hypo.
You can understand why, people then become their story. You make a really interesting point in the book, be you rather than diabetic. And people do become their health issues, but also people become what they've been told to become over the period of time, don't they?
Absolutely, yeah.
Talk about that.
I think, first of all, taking the label diabetic, that's something I detest, because it's such a static, definitive label that can consume a person. So they just become the diabetic or the asthmatic, the epileptic, the autistic person. They become that particular label. And that's, it's just a condition. That's all it is. And that's all it ever has to be, because, you're a person and you're so much more than a bloody health condition. There's just so much more to everybody. If they find that purpose and then they actualize that, they realize what potential they have. However, when you get comments like, and I hear this of so many people I see, that they've been told, and this is why they cannot believe that they can actually reverse diabetes, is because they're told by their GPs a lot of the time, and other people, including some forms of media as well, that once a diabetic, you'll always be a diabetic. And that's a lot of the time, even people with type 2 diabetes have been told that. And we know that's certainly never the case. But even with type 1 diabetes, it's just rubbish. That's something that does get to me, because it does make people become consumed in the condition, what you say. So that's where the focus goes. And anything that we give focus and attention to constantly, then we're just going to become that. We're just going to fulfill what label we're giving ourselves and attaching everything to. And
in many respects, you refer to it as a form of self-hypnosis. I absolutely agree. I see people coming to me and they're very much their health story. They relay it like this weighty baggage, and part of the work, and I assume the same for yourself, but it's part for their recovery, is helping them to stop being their health story and start to live again outside of those parameters.
Yes, absolutely, and it's so refreshing to hear you say that as well, Deborah, because there aren't enough people or enough professionals in the world that help people to see beyond their condition. And I think, especially with diabetes, we need to be looking differently at this, because we need to go beyond the physical aspect of conditions. Although that's important, that's something we can deal with, something we can manage, and that's, some other forms of work that we do. We need to go beyond the physical and start looking at the metaphysical in terms of what were the thoughts and emotions that actually cause the physical manifestation of a particular condition, disease or illness in the first place. So that's one aspect, but also in terms of a person being consumed by their condition, we really need to look at what greater purpose they can have, what's their true blueprint in life. And in terms of diabetes, I always link the metaphysical, the reason why we developed something in the first place is because with diabetes, there's a loss of sweetness in life. Something's being taken away, because if we think about the physicality of diabetes in terms of unless we artificially inject insulin or take medication, the body is just releasing cannot get rid of the excess sugar in the body. So effectively the body is being poisoned by all this sugar. And that's really metaphorical of how much we're trying to compensate with sweetness in the body for something that we lack externally. So it's as if something, this can relate back to some nasty shock or trauma that has taken away the sweetness in life, and then that's been manifested as the condition of diabetes. So it's about rekindling that sweetness, looking at a bigger purpose in life, looking at what your real blueprint is, who an individual is, rather than the health condition. Because once we can get back to our roots, be fulfilled in life, find our blueprint, then natural health will restore itself. And that's a big point of what I talk about in Mind Body Medicine.
And in many respects that links quite nicely with Louisa Hay's work, doesn't it, in regards to everything has an emotional basis to it. So there's always a root cause on that level. And ultimately all health issues are not just on the physical level.
Absolutely. Louise Hay is fantastic in terms of explaining the metaphysical aspect of health, how our thoughts and emotions transpire into all health, because when we go back to the mind-body connection, all our thoughts and emotions are reflected throughout the entire body, because the very neurotransmitters, the electric chemicals that carry our thoughts, bathe every cell in the rest of the body. So constantly they're sending signals, the mind to the body, which is causing our thoughts and emotions to be reflected throughout the entire body. Now, in the book, that goes into some detail in the first chapter, and specifically how this works and how our thoughts and emotions affect and change the biochemistry of the brain, which then sends certain signals and messages to the body, which then cause our organs, tissues, enzymes, chromosomes, genes to react in specific ways that then manifest specifically as health, disease, illness, etc.
Now, this is really interesting because ultimately this goes much wider, doesn't it? It goes into our environment. Everything has an influence on us, absolutely everything. Because if we're saying that it's not just on a physical level, and our body, we know ourselves that our bodies are reacting on a moment by moment basis to everything around us, everything on our peripheral vision, everything is giving the body a message. Ultimately, everything in our environment absolutely matters, doesn't it? The people, the messages, the television, absolutely everything, because it's constantly either reinforcing the wrong message that you want to hear, or it's enforcing the right message.
Gosh, absolutely. And again, I have dedicated an entire chapter to this because it is so important. Our perceptions, everything we take in through every one of our senses, all the information that's around us, whether we're taking it in consciously, subconsciously or unconsciously, basically completely out of our awareness, it's still going into our mind at some level. So it's influencing us in some particular way. So it's important we know how to reject certain things and how to maintain the right positive mindset deep within us, because obviously we can't control what other people say, what other people do, although that would be a fantastic power to have half of the time, especially when it comes to the media portraying diabetes sometimes, even in programs, etc. It has a very negative connotation. So I think they're chomping at the bit sometimes. But unfortunately, we can't control external forces, so we have to have a very hard, tough, positive inner core to be able to deal with what we can deal with and put focus in the right place, because so all too easy there are negative influences around. There's something I actually quote in chapter 7, I haven't got the quote to hand, but basically it's saying how type 2 diabetes will shorten your life by 10 years. It's actually what we call an installation rather than even a suggestion, because it's so given as a fact as if, you know, you can't dispute this. It's not can happen, might happen. It's will happen or this happens. So it's very definitive, and it's very negative, and it's also absolute rubbish. So if people pick this up and this filters in the mind, even if they subconsciously think, oh, that's just rubbish, it still goes in there, and it can still go in unconsciously unless the person has that very deep inner core belief that it is rubbish because they know otherwise. So it's very important to have a good awareness of this. And as I said, in the book, we talk very much in depth about this, and I give lots of examples in terms of positive suggestion as well as negative suggestion and how it influences in terms of the health it generates and the specific responses that we have to it.
You actually highlight something that absolutely rankles me, I'll be absolutely honest. And that's the weaving of the stories around the flu jab. And there's a number of reasons why, some personal, some not so personal. But there are flu jab circulars. Apparently, it's on the news. It's in every supermarket you walk in. How you've got to have your flu jab, and how winter months portray colds, and you clearly say that it was priming us to be sick and alters our neurology. And ultimately, from my perspective, it's mass hypnosis. I see these things and I have to have a really strong, closing it down what I'm seeing. I'm closing that down. It's not true. Because ultimately I don't want to become ill like everybody else, because I do see that those messages are a download. This is how your body will behave, because it does. Everything we see, everything we interact with has an influence. And I genuinely think that people do not realise that from everything we say, everything around us matters.
Brilliant. I love that you picked up on that point, because there are so many examples I give of negative suggestions, and to hand, I just never forget them all. So, yeah, that is perfect with a few examples there. Because even if I started talking now, or, as if I'm really bunged up and I have a cold and a sore throat, then, it can easily project onto yourself, and you can start easily feeling bunged up, etc. The power of negative hypnosis is just amazing in how it can actually alter the mind. But yes, in terms of looking at diabetes, there's specifically flu circulars all the time. I mean, sometimes I do actually point this out to the doctors, so I think they think I'm a bit of a strange one. But I do actually tell them to take it off my prescription of reminding me you must have a flu jab because you are in the vulnerable group. Because as far as I'm concerned, hang on a minute, why the hell does having diabetes make me in a vulnerable group? If it's maintained well, and for myself, I'm in the process of reversal, but even if I wasn't doing that and I just had the right mindset and healthy and well and maintaining and managing it, then why should that put me in a vulnerable group? And that's something I say all the time. And to back that up, it's been, 18, 19 years since I ever had a flu jab. And the only time I did was because I was living at home, and I think I've had diabetes for about a year. So it was pretty new to us. So my mum took me for the flu jab, but since I had everything at my own discretion, then I've never had the flu jab because I don't believe I need it. And I've also never had the flu at all. I've had the odd cold here and there, but then that's significant of emotions, because people believe that you can actually still catch a cold, and actually it's not a case of catching the cold at all. It's more a case of our emotions with us being run down, for example, so our immune system becomes run down, and therefore we can attract the cold or flu virus if we allow ourselves to, or we are subject to certain suggestions. Then yes, of course you can catch cold in that respect. But actually, in terms of just catching the virus because you go outside with wet hair, or the person next to you's got cold, then that's actually rubbish. Too, there's so many experiments that actually back this up as well. And one I can think of to hand is scientists took the cold and flu virus and placed it in the membranes of subjects' noses. And out of the whole group of people, only 12% of them actually contracted the cold or the flu. So they were probably 12% of people with maybe negative thought process going on, maybe suggestible, maybe a lower immune system for whatever other reason, thoughts and emotions going off there. So there's really no reason that we should catch a cold. It is, as you say, and as I say in the book, just mass negative hypnosis, so we can refute that on every level, really. And certainly, please, anybody with diabetes, never be in the vulnerable group, because you never have to be. Like I said, 18, 19 years, no flu jab and no flu, because it's all to do with how we think and how we look after ourselves. And diabetes is really no excuse to be at all.
Also, my understanding is that these jabs have never been tested against these vulnerable groups, but that's a whole different show. And let's talk about the reduction in immune systems, because, you know, what you're referring to there is ultimately people are getting run down, and it's because of something that's going on in their lifestyle. And stress management, which ultimately that's, from my perspective, that's what it's about, is absolutely key for blood sugar management, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely, because the more stressed we are, there's a direct relation that if we stress, so if we've got the negative thoughts going on that then affect our emotions, so we feel uptight, we feel anxious, then the biochemistry of the brain actually changes, because the emotional part of the brain, the amygdala, starts sending certain signals to the hypothalamus, which is responsible for producing chemicals in response to this. So this produces a specific, it's called corticotropin releasing factor, and that then causes the pituitary gland in the brain to effectively then release more chemicals to tell the adrenals to produce cortisol and adrenaline. Now, cortisol is a potent immune system suppressor, and it also causes insulin resistance as much as cortisol and adrenaline being used by the liver to actually break down stored glucose, which then is released ultimately into the bloodstream. So there's a direct correlation between stress, changing the biochemistry of the brain, which then sends signals to the rest of the body to release certain hormones that then directly impact upon blood sugar levels, and ultimately increasing sugar levels, as much as many other undesirable effects that causes the weakened immune system. Hence, when we are stressed and run down, we start to get other symptoms like IBS, headaches, panic attacks, you name it. It can be attributed to stress, as you'll know, Deborah, yourself.
And, you know, I actually don't think diabetics, or those people with diabetes, are being told that actually stress is such a factor on managing their blood sugar levels.
I think most people with diabetes aren't told the many things that affect them, including the fact that thoughts and emotions are key to all health and healing, and that diabetes can be stopped in its entirety if we take a different approach to this and a totally different way of thinking for different results. That is the key. And as I say, the book explains specifically why this is so, and moreover how we can actually do this and make the changes. But yeah, stress is a real key one there. So people can minimize stress in terms of all aspects in lifestyle, in terms of looking at what they really want from life, what do they want to do, probably need to find a way of being more fulfilled and not concentrate just on the day-to-day stresses, because a lot of the time we can't just avoid stress in its entirety. It's natural, it's something that happens in life, but it's how we manage that and coping mechanisms as much as how we can resolve major stresses.
One of the saddest things I have happen is when I ask my hugely stressed out clients, where's the joy in your life, which is ultimately the same as where's the sweetness in your life, and lots of them can't answer it.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good point, because that spider there, seeing yourself or seeing myself in the first place, is because they may need help rekindling back. And it's when we meet with this again, we meet with our blueprint and what causes this joy, what has to happen in order to make a person feel fulfilled, to feel happy. What are those key attributes they really need in order to resolve all the other nitbits in their life? So it's finding that higher purpose and really connecting with that in order to, it sounds so simple on the face of it, but to restore health and healing, that is what we're looking at, because ultimately, as human beings, that's what we need. The key psychological needs. We have to have a purpose. We have to have change. There's so many key factors we need in our lives, but because our day-to-day life as it goes on, people tend to forget this, and it's about going back to basics and really looking at what you want from life and how you can go about achieving this.
Now, I believe that a lot of issues and behaviours that we're seeing in today's society are actually due to fluctuating blood sugar levels, and most people don't realise it.
Yes, I think that goes a long way with the amount of carbohydrates that are in food, and especially even hidden sugars. It's so easy just to have a quick convenience diet, and it's loaded with the carbohydrates, and of course then they cause the fluctuating blood sugar in anybody, never mind anybody with diabetes, because as we eat the sugar, our bodies naturally pump out the insulin, and then because they've pumped out so much insulin, then we need the sugar to compensate for it again. So it's constantly a vicious cycle then of highs and lows and peaks and dips. So something that would evidence this is the fatigue during the day. So energetic at one point, and then these sudden lows in energy. That's just the peaks and troughs of sugar levels. But certainly, yes, it contributes to obesity for one, mood swings, fatigue, which, the highs and lows during the day, even thrush infections, IBS symptoms, headaches. It's largely responsible, as you say, for a lot of other problems in society today.
When I was running a diet group, one of the things I was trying to teach them was about blood sugar management, and they would come with their stories of where they just could not stop eating, and about them effectively sharking the fridge and almost fighting their kids off the Haribo sweets, which was quite funny, I have to say. And one of the key things was helping them to keep balanced, because ultimately it kept, as you say, it stops fatigue, it stops arguments. Now, we'd highlight arguments that happen, behaviour changes, road rage. I have to believe a lot of road rage is actually down to blood sugar mismanagement. Anyway,
what the people that keep the sweets in the side of the car?
Yes, exactly, and have the constant coffees.
Yes, yeah. It's as you say though, it's very addictive, and it's until people can break that cycle and level it out with balance that then they will start to see solutions. But it's also indicative of balance in life as well. So if you go right back to the root cause and metaphysical causes of thoughts and emotions, why is it you're craving so much sugar in the first place? What's making you crave the carbohydrates rather than just go steady and balanced? And, because most people are intelligent when it comes to it, and they do know what they should be doing, but consciously, this is, they suppress this, and their emotions override it. So what is it you really need to be looking at and questioning yourself as to why you're actually letting this process go on?
Fantastic. Now, excitingly, insulin was found to exist and function in the brain, and insulin suggested to act on its own receptors present in the brain. So this leaves endless opportunities for people to use this mind-body approach, doesn't it?
Yes, that's absolutely. I mean, there's so many aspects to the mind-body approach, and they're all gone over in the book. And one thing I do talk about is insulin receptors found in the brain. So whether this is of peripheral origin or it's actually made and produced in the brain, it doesn't matter. It shows that it exists there. So if we can do what I give as the visualization trance to stimulate insulin naturally within the body, then, you know, if we visualize something enough with enough specificity and detail and clarity, then the unconscious mind, the part of the mind that runs the body on autopilot, can't actually tell the difference between what's real and what's not real. So you can imagine with that the absolute power that's possible there. And it just shows anything is possible within the body, because the chemicals that are found to be in the body and to function physically are also found to be in the brain. So the mind and everything that goes off in our psychology, our neurology, in our head is just reflective of what's going on in the body. Hence we talk about the metaphorical and metaphysical significance of health.
And you say in the book, diabetes is never really the problem. It is actually life's various events and how we respond to things that can cause the problem.
Gosh, absolutely, yeah, because if we go right back to the thought process all the time, it is never actually diabetes. That's just a condition, and it can be managed with as I talk about, a multi-pronged approach. But just taking it as we know it at the moment, if our mindset is in the right place with everything else in life that we might have to deal with, then diabetes can be controlled. It never has to be a problem. The only time diabetes is ever a problem physically is if it isn't controlled. If sugar levels are out of the normal range for a specific period of time, then complications are brought on, and we experience, you know, all the nasties and the baggage that the condition can bring. But that's only if our mindset's not quite right from something else happening that we allow that to happen in the first place. So even if we talk about the development of type 2 diabetes, first of all, if we go back to mindset, well, that only develops because somebody's responding to stress, say, by eating lots, going for the comfort food, overindulging, living a sedentary lifestyle, not being active, showing signs of depression, again, which may result in overindulging, sedentary lifestyle, even more excess stress. So these are all the factors that then contribute to the diagnosis of diabetes and poor management of it. But that all comes from something else happening. So what caused a person to feel depressed in the first place that led them to eat more, say, that then led to the manifestation of diabetes. So you can see there's always some greater external force, something greater going on in life that causes the actual problem, not diabetes per se.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much for this interview. How do people get in contact with you, Emma?
They can go on my website, which is dr-m.co.uk, and they can see me in practice. So there'll be links on that site to the practice. But I'm also holding Skype sessions now, so so anybody can contact me all over the country or all over the world. So I'm easily accessible.
Perfect. I thought it was a really interesting book. I expected
thank you.
I expected a book that would just outline a dietary plan, and I actually read about so much more, and it was a really fascinating read, and really quite a saddening read as well at times, about your experiences and how you'd managed to come out of it with such a solid mindset. And it really did open my eyes about what some of my clients must be experiencing. So I was very grateful for that. Yeah.
That's great news. I hope it can really, if people want to be helped and people want to make changes and want to make a difference, this book will do that without question, this book will help you. I mean, for example, in Chapter 2 is just dedicated to a question set to help people go through this and just think differently, because, as I say, it sounds very simple on the face of it, although the book will explain otherwise. Mindset is first and foremost key to everything. Get that right, and everything else will follow. That's something I can wholeheartedly promise you. And yes, while diet and lifestyle are important in any aspect of diabetes, that's one small chapter here to accelerate the process, but there's tons of resources and techniques to do in terms of the mind-body approach that will make an enormous difference. But mindset's everything in terms of healing. If you have a greater goals and a purpose other than diabetes, that will make a big difference. Self-responsibility for health and healing, and making sure that you're working with good practitioners and that you have a good support network always around you as well, because as we've discussed earlier, that does have a massive impact, especially if it's negative, because negativity breeds at the end of the day. And just working on having an indestructible mindset, follow the traits, follow the keys. I mean, if you have an ever positive and cheerful attitude, makes a massive difference in terms of the health anybody will experience. And I will just very quickly say, just have the absence of panic when things don't always go according to plan in diabetes. There's always something that can help, something you can do to get to the bottom of it. The book provides a specific support plans for this, of what to do when things go astray. It gives you certain sets of questions that you can follow and go through. But just always know, have a total deep down belief and trust yourself, trust your body's infinite wisdom that it can heal itself with the right guidance. And you know, if you want it, it's all out there, and you can stop diabetes today. And stop calling yourself a diabetic, because you know that's the first key. It's a very small, simple change, but it's a small change that can change everything in terms of how you see yourself, and just losing a bit of this condition. So lose the tick, or it will stick, as I say.
Perfect. Dr. Emma Mardlin, thank you for coming on Food for Thought today.
Oh, you're very welcome. Fantastic discussion, Deborah. And as I said, fab work you do, especially, you know, with all natural health in your practice and this radio station. I love it.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay, take care. Thank you.